Right, we're ready to get started. And to start off our afternoon, we have a panel of 5 distinguished folks, leaders from agriculture and conservation, who are going to help us take a look back at the last 30 years of agricultural conservation. And to lead this discussion, we have with us a very good friend. Mr. Neil Strong is, what I like to say first about Neil is he's one of my favorite people, and he's also a past chairman of CTIC, and he has a long distinguished career in agriculture with Geigy, Agricultural Chemicals, Novartis, and Syngenta. So he's been around for a while. He's received many awards and had leadership roles in helping to guide where conservation was going and the impact that it could make for agriculture and for the environment. So my pleasure to introduce you to Neil Strong.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be here, and I would also like to, on behalf of my panel, thank Mosaic, Monsanto, Syngenta, and my personal sponsor, Syngenta, for this event. It's a great event, and I'm glad that CTIC didn't wait another 20 years, because I think I would have been too damn old to come. So it's good that you had it now, to have 30 years. It's remarkable. We do have a great panel. I've met with their campaign committees. We've agreed on a format. So they're all cool about it. Although, I do have to tell you that my panel does have an objection. I don't, personally, because I'm old. But they feel like they're too young to be representing looking 30 years back. They just, you know, they're pretty bitter about it. Bill, you might be close to it. You're in my category. So they're a little bit hesitant about that, but I know they're going to do a great job, and I do want to introduce them to you. Their full bios are on page 4 of your handout, but let me just give you a brief bio and ask them to come up. First, Jane Frankenberger, head of Purdue University's Cooperative Extension Program in Soil and Water Engineering, and author of dozens of papers on water quality issues. So we're glad you're here, Jane. And second is Brent Haglund. Brent's president of the Sand County Foundation and the Bradley Fund for Environment, a longtime consultant on conservation issues, and the author of Wild Wisconsin and Hands-on Environmentalism. Bruce Knight. Bruce, a conservation policy consultant in D.C. I had to add that, Bruce.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And a third-generation farmer and rancher. In fact, he'd just come back from South Dakota. In 2002, Bruce was named NRCS chief, a position he held until being promoted to USDA Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, where he served from 2006 to 2009. Bill Richards. Bill's an Ohio farmer, and I know that because I've been on your farm, Bill. He practices what he preaches, who served as chief of the U.S. Department's Agricultural and Natural Resources Service, NRCS. Why didn't I say that? It's a lot easier. Under George H. Bush. And fifth, but not last, my friend Steve Taylor, president of the Missouri Agribusiness Association, former executive director of the Environmental Resources Coalition here in Missouri, and a veteran of the Missouri Corn Growers Association and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. You jumped over.
I can't stay. Just like you, Neil, I can't stand.
So we're happy to have this panel, and would you give them a warm welcome? All right, as I understand the format, we have an hour to discuss amongst ourselves. No heckling or throwing things from the audience. But if you have an important question, it's really a good one, you can interrupt us, all right? So, but we will have a half hour for Q's and A's from you. And I know a lot of people in this audience, and if you don't ask questions, I'm calling your name. So be prepared, all right? I'm retired, I can get away with things. You know, we've all been talking about conservation over the last 30 years, and some of us remember conservation for 30 years, some like Jane and Steve and Bruce, maybe not. Brent, a little more so. Bill, you and I were there, bud. We remember it. We were there. But the first question I'd like to ask is about, and we just heard this from the president of Monsanto, is about the technologies that have advanced conservation during the last 3 decades. And Bill, I think you wanted to kind of start out on that one.
I volunteer. First, thank you to CTIC, and it's been wonderful to really visit with lots of old friends. It's also a privilege to be the old guy up here. I've also hopefully smart enough that I wrote down what I wanted to say, because you know they do say old guys get to repeating themselves. It's probably no surprise to anyone in this room that I say that no-till is the technology. I think we started something that's really become a revolution on the land all over this world. It's the breakthrough that really, I think, has made the greatest difference. I have critics that have always said that, well, no-till's not everything. Well, I'll ask you, so tell me what's second, and how far back is number 2. Farmers learned very early the savings of fuel, labor, machinery, management. We all know that. The conservation system saw the soil erosion benefits, and the actual soil loss reduction could be measured and could be quantified. And as that no-till curve went up, that soil loss curve went down on the charts. But the real gain has come from continuous no-till, and what we in Ohio are starting to call never-till. Soil quality improvements are beyond our dreams. Organic matter is increasing. Soil density is decreasing. Water infiltration. Sometimes we see a 10-fold increase in infiltration. Biological activity increases. Yields are increasing. Costs are decreasing. The machinery and the chemical industries have really responded with wonderful equipment, wonderful products. Planting is getting easier each year for all of us that are no-tilling. No-till helps provide more affordable food and fuel for a growing world population. No-till also makes available marginal or more fragile lands that will provide for the 9 billion people that are projected by 2050. Well-managed no-till is beyond sustainable. We can build and improve soil with no-till. So no-till is the breakthrough technology that we have, breakthrough technology really of the last 30 years. I'm interested to hear opinions, especially on this panel, of tell me what's in second place. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Bruce?
I'm a convicted no-tiller. Have been doing it for a number of years. Most of my fields have been no-till for well over 10 years, and we're seeing the benefits on the ranch this year as we're coming through a drought. But, you know, Chief, I love you, but I put no-till second.
Let's hear it.
Okay. My father came home from World War II and was still farming with horses. Still putting up hay on the ranch with horses. And he said the happiest day of his career was when he sold the horses. And the single biggest thing that has improved sustainability of agriculture is actually mechanization. Now that goes back a little more than the last 30 years. But it's what has improved sustainability is we don't have to have 20 to 30% of our land base set aside to feed horses. And we've dramatically made, and this is what's unleashed all the things, including no-till. So I put mechanization first in the big picture, no-till in second, modern genetics with biotechnology as a subset of that in third, and then fourth is GPS technology. Because GPS is what's allowed us to now put precision conservation in place. You know, everybody talks about precision agriculture, But what we're actually practicing is precision conservation. Precise seed placement, precise fertilizer placement that really allows us to maximize yields. And when we maximize yields, we're maximizing efficiency. And I think I'm probably cutting hairs with you on this when I go back to mechanization first and no-till. But the key thing here is no-till only works if it's part of a system. And it's when we start looking at agriculture as systems and not as one technique, one technology, one crop or another, but we look at it as a system that started to really revolutionize conservation in an understanding that conservation is wholly linked with production.
Cool. You know, for a young guy, you got a really old soul and a good history. That's pretty good. Steve?
I definitely wouldn't want to disagree with either of the fine chiefs to the right of me. And my good friend Bruce, I've known for a long time. So I won't do that. I'll add to, maybe I'll add to the conversation. And maybe it's already out there in a way, but I want to emphasize. And that's going to be weed control. And, you know, no-till, I think, went hand in hand with the increase in technologies we had in no-till. I was at MU, I was undergrad at MU in the early 80s, and my job I had was working for the Department of Agronomy, and we did weed pesticide testing. And back in those days, I mean, it's technology chemistries that now have already faded away. Back then, they were just an experimental number. But I remember we were using some of them experimental numbers, and maybe, you know, given where we're at today, I shouldn't mention Monsanto, but Roundup. But we had other technology back in the day. It was Ciba-Geigy that we were testing. And I have to think, I agree with you that no-till was it, but we had to park those cultivators. We had to park that tillage equipment. And what made that possible was the weed control technology that came on the scene.
Good points.
And I think all of those technologies that have made it possible to solve many of the soil erosion related issues have allowed us in the last 10 years or so, this is more recent, as you said, is to think about the water quality issues that aren't tied to soil erosion. So it's the dissolved pollutants that have come into the fore in the last 10 years or so. And especially for we in the Midwest, in the Corn Belt, tile drainage being such a pathway that has been raised up as a very important pathway that we need to deal with in the conservation community. So there are technologies finally in the last 10 years or so that have started to come forward that can help us deal with nitrate in drains in particular, so bioreactors, drainage, water management. And so these are, might not compete with no-till, or certainly mechanization. As an agricultural engineer, I love to hear that one held up. But I do want to raise up the important role that drainage technologies are playing today and will into the future.
How do you see no-till fitting into that chain? Do you help or hindrance?
I don't know that there would be either help or hindrance. There's sort of two things that can go together very well. There are a few technologies that wouldn't go as well with no-till, but I think on the whole they certainly can, and so they're building up together. So it's one is dealing with the so erosion and surface runoff related parameters. Another one is going with the other part of the water that goes into the subsurface.
Sure. Okay. Brent?
Well, I want to say that most everybody approaches ag if they've been a practitioner out of their family history, and mine's no different. My family history was a family of Norwegian fishermen who went to northern Minnesota to farm rocks, and look how successful that was. My grandfather, my Norwegian grandfather, never ran a piece of motorized machinery in his life. Horse-drawn, yes. So I want to hit on three things that I think, to me, aren't directly going to get me caught in the crossfire between these two guys. They can fight it out, and whatever shootout they want to have. But I'm going to stress three things. Safety, accessibility, and sophistication that's useful. So broadening over this, because the question is, what technologies have advanced? Let me give you an example of what I think safety means. Safety means that the equipment is safer to use. I think the safety is, again, I can't extract my own personal experiences out of this, but I think back to the friends of the family who died in farm equipment failures. And I suspect most of us in this room have that, at least memories or been told those kind of stories. I think with the improvement of safety, we have access to equipment that a broader array of people can run and run safely and well. And it's not just a matter of brute force of managing a team of horses, but certainly skill is desired and necessary in that. And it further, in my opinion, a focus on safety, technology that focuses on safety and getting that thinking, helps to change the whole farm operation to one that thinks more carefully, more effectively, and looks at matters like insurance, like matters of meeting the standards of training of people. And so I think there's a general mindset that comes along here. It's that's going to help. It's part of the tide that's going to float all the boats. And the last two, other people can handle all of these things far, far better than me, but I think the accessibility of the devices, the fact that the prices are dropping and that they are now becoming more useful for that precision conservation that's getting closer and closer critical.
Great.